Well, I was going to do a video about pre-tripping, but it's been raining and raining and raining. So I guess it's story time. So, if you're in this business anytime, we all have that one run that always sticks in our memory. I've had a lot of great runs. There's a lot of things I really like to do out here, and a lot of places I really like to go. As I've gotten older, the list has gotten smaller. But, nonetheless, back when I was younger, it was all a real adventure. Going places that I hadn't been to in years, or just going places that I'd never been to at all. Like going to Hunts Point Market for the first time. This isn't a story about that, but Hunts Point, if you've never been, is an interesting trip. Do it once. Do it as a company driver so you don't have to pay the tolls. But most of the time, a lot of these stories and these horror stories are hearsay. So what do I mean by that? Well, a lot of times, a lot of fears we have on some of these trips are because other people had bad experiences, and you've heard similar stories. Truth be known, as a truck driver, I've heard the same story 1,000 times, but a lot of people just make it their own. And I know most of the time it's crap. As with anything, like going to California, most of the time when you hear people that got in trouble and they're mad and all that, they pulled me over for no reason. No, they pulled you over because you were doing 65 and a 55. Or you were in the left lane, or you were doing something you weren't supposed to be doing. This isn't one of those stories about that. I've got a few of those. And I'm waiting for the statute of limitations to expire so I can tell you some. But this is a story about one of my first trips back out east. And it was an interesting story, and it's the one that stuck out in my mind. So, here we go. Years ago, when I was in the Army, I used to live out east. I was stationed in Aberdeen, Maryland. Actually, I was stationed on the Edgewood Arsenal. Just about 25 miles north of Baltimore. And we used to run down to Baltimore and White Marsh on the evenings, and we had a great time. It was fun. I've always liked Maryland. I've always liked the East Coast. You get out of the cities, it's a beautiful place. But I got a load out there one time, but it was kind of obscure. So I come out of the house and they bust me all the way. I pick up and I boogie all the way up. I think I boogied either to Aurora or Illinois. It was a Clorox load. Was it? Yeah. So, and usually if you could get on the dry rounds, it was good. I hated hauling meat for these guys because every time I hauled meat, I'd end up getting just screwed. I still hate hauling meat, but that's neither here nor there. So I get up to Chicago and I drop my trailer, and they're like, grab an empty dry van, go next door to Owens Brockway, and we're going to get you a load out to Clorox in Cleveland. Now, Clorox in Cleveland was a special place. Back in the old days, we used to get books of directions, and they were written by truck drivers, which is usually your first red flag. And when I drove for the Outlaw Company, most of the guys all wanted to be big steppers, so they would always figure out which four lane they could go on so they could boogie, which was pointless because at the time Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois were all 55. Well, Indiana was 60, but it was all split speed, 55 miles an hour. It really kind of sucked. And nobody ever took the toll road in Ohio because it was really expensive. So we'd all come in off Highway 20 and just 55 is 55. Highway 20 was, it was actually a really busy route just because all the trucks were on it. It was busier than the interstate, which I thought was funny. But I get the directions to go over to Cleveland, and they give me directions off Highway 2, which comes in the top side along the lake, and you got to weave through town and get back to Cleveland that way. So you have to go down to a street called Enterprise Avenue. And I'll just cut to the end here, the punchline, because it was right off, was it 480 and Enterprise, the interstate. But since a truck driver wrote this, he drove it in off Highway 2, so I am literally weaving through the hood, which is known as Cleveland, and I'm spending like 30 minutes trying to get through town and all these roads, following the directions precisely. I get to where I'm going, I see Enterprise, and right next to the Enterprise street sign for Enterprise Avenue is the entrance to 480. And I remember thinking, that dumb SOB. I said all I had to do was get on 480 and hang a left. So I started checking my directions more closely after that. So I get this load to Chicago, and I've got it load up at this place called Owens Brockway. Owens Brockway was a manufacturer of plastic bottles. They still around. They had a plant right across from the Clorox plant, and I would take it over to Cleveland, where they put it in, like, because Clorox, you wouldn't believe what Clorox owns. You know, they had Liquid Plumber and 409. Those were the bottles I hauled, and so I boogie that night all the way over there, and I get a message. Well, actually, I didn't get a message. I called them up on the phone. They had a payphone there. And he says, hey, I have a load going to Clorox. I said, yeah, in Aberdeen, Maryland. I was like, I used to live over there. So he says, drop it at Clorox. I got another trailer right there. Grab the bills and start booking to Aberdeen. I'm like, bonus. So I hadn't been out there in years, and I thought it would be a lot of fun to just do it, because Aberdeen's right off US 1 on the north side of Baltimore there. And so I book it, leave Cleveland, and I get out there early Saturday morning. I left Clorox Friday night, get out there early Saturday morning in Cleveland, and find the Clorox plant. Well, I was supposed to pick up at the Clorox plant in Aberdeen, and they tell me it's not going to be loaded on Monday. I was like, I kicked my own butt to get out here. So what to do? Well, I used to live there, so what to do? What to do indeed. Well, I found stuff to do. The one neat thing about the East Coast is that, unlike the Midwest, everything is a lot more tightly compacted. And there's a lot more public transportation everywhere. I mean, there's little gypsy cabs everywhere, or little tiny cab companies. I mean, you get a town like Edgewood, a town the size of Edgewood in in Kansas, where I live, there wouldn't be a cab there for 100 miles. But every little town has a cab, and there's commuter trains that go up and down, and there's buses, and it's a really unique place. You can get around without a car. It's a lot easier than it is in Kansas. So one thing I used to do when I'd go out places like this is I'd collect business cards. So you sit there and find, if you get a random card for a cab company, just sit there and call them up. That's before Uber and ride sharing and stuff like that. So, this is the way you did it. So I got the yellow pages out for the area, flipped through, found a cab, gave him a call. And there used to be a bar down the street called the Eagle's Nest that I'd gotten kicked out quite a few years prior. I didn't have an ID. I did. I was underage. I was 20 at the time. So, that's a whole nother story that will never hear the light of day. Sorry. But, so, I go down Saturday night. Had a great Saturday night. Beer, food, the whole ordeal. I realized that there was a Walmart down the street. I went to the Walmart. I did all my laundry. They had a laundromat. This is the first time I ever saw a cashless laundromat, and this is back in 2003, 2004. Yeah. You had to buy credits to put on a little card. I think they did it so people wouldn't break into the laundromat and steal the money. They probably didn't like keeping cash on site. But the point is, I used to live out there, so I decided I'd hit some of the old haunts, and I just enjoy myself. And I got a hotel room for 2 nights. I just made a weekend of it. And I encourage everybody to do that. If you're in some place where you haven't been before, get out of the truck, man. Go enjoy it. Have a good time. If you got to sit for 2 days, don't sit for 2 days stewing in the truck. Go out and see something. That's my point on that. So Monday rolls around and the load's ready. So I call them up on the phone. Load's ready. Check out of the hotel. Head over to Clorox in Aberdeen. So I get over to Clorox in Aberdeen and find out the load's going to Clorox in Houston. That's a heck of a trip. Aberdeen, Maryland, I basically took 81 down to 40 and just weaved my way all the way down to Texarkana and down. I mean, it was a great trip. I get to pick my own route, and that was the first time I come out of Aberdeen on 95 and cut down to over to 81 and took 81 all the way down to Knoxville. And it was all new territory to me because I'd never really run out there before. Yeah, I'd been to Ohio and all that, but it was all pretty much the Ohio Valley. Not really much East Coast. And it's the first time I ever saw the Shenandoah Valley. It was beautiful. Just 81 all the way down. Got into Knoxville and just kept working my way down towards Houston. And it was a wonderful trip. And the neat thing about it was before we didn't have Qualcomms or cell phones or anything like that. So I mean, I had 3 or 4 days of just no contact. I mean, I'd make a check call in the morning, but there was just 0 contact with anybody. And I was allowed basically at the time to just really enjoy where I was at. It's like I've talked about before. All these guys still do this not because they like the customers or the shippers. It was the in-between times when you could just be an adult, do your thing, and just really enjoy the moment. And part of me thinks we've kind of lost that, but I did enjoy the moment, and I boogied on down to Houston, and that's when things got a little weird. So, boogie on down to Houston. I get notification. I call up. He says, hey, yeah, here's your load number. That's where I'm picking up. He says, you're picking up there at Clorox. I got a load going to Johnstown, Colorado, or Fort Morgan, or wherever that Walmart was up there, Fort Collins, somewhere up there, that Walmart DC up by Johnstown. And he says, I said, it's time for me to go home. He says, well, yeah. He says, it's going right through the house. The load is. He says, don't worry. I'll have a relay for you. I'm thinking, you drunk SOB, I know you won't, but I'll just wait and see. Because they did get people that came down to Wichita. I was living in town at the time. And so I basically got unloaded and reloaded, and I think it happened in the same dock. I mean, it just bam and bam. So I've been driving all day. I come out of there. I stop at the Flying J on the north side of Houston just to take a break. I sleep a few hours. I get up at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I book it all the way. I book it all the way back to Wichita. I roll into Wichita about 1:30 in the afternoon. I had to get through Dallas for a rush hour. So I roll through into Wichita about 1:30 in the afternoon, and I park the truck. And I walk into my apartment, because I used to park at the Food for Less across the street, and I walked into my apartment there when I lived in Westway. And I make a phone call. it turned into a very unpleasant phone call. So I make a phone call to dispatch and say, all right, where is he? Where's who? The guy that's supposed to take this load to Colorado, be there in the morning. There's no guy. I couldn't find one. Now, doubtfully he even looked for one, honestly. I knew this guy. He never wanted to call him on a Sunday needing a TCH check, because he'd get off work at 5 and by 5:02 he'd be hammered. And he just stayed in a constant flux of alcoholism. It was so bad that I actually hope he found help. He really needed help. But never found anybody. And I'm like, dude, I'm standing in my living room right now. Well, I'll have you home tomorrow. No, you won't. I said, it's going to be 5 days. I said, you won't get me home tomorrow. I've been down this road before. So he's like, no, I'll get you home in the next day or two. We just need it out there in Colorado in the morning. So I walk out to the truck, take one look at my logbook, and pretty much just toss it in the bunk, fire the truck up, and I move out to, I'm sitting there in Johnson's Corner that night about 8:30 local time. So I get the load delivered, and he's like, I need you to run up to Lexington and grab this load. I was like, oh, here we go. And it was 4 days before he got me home. Despite as much as I liked that load, the kicker of it was I ended up doing a complete circle back around Iowa and back into Illinois and back around. And he ended up getting me a load. He's like, well, I got a guy in St. Joseph, Missouri to swap out, and you can just deadhead home from St. Joe, Missouri. I'm like, that's a long ways, but whatever. So I swap out my trailer with the guy. I go home, and then when I get home, he gives me a load in Gallatin, Missouri. So I have to drive all the way back from Wichita to Gallatin, Missouri, and only get paid the 22 miles between St. Joe and Gallatin. It was a mess. But that was one of my most memorable trips. Not the last part of it, but just the part about going out and just enjoying where I was at. The whole trip back east. The first time for everything. Just having a real long run. There's no real point in this video except for this. When you're faced with something like this, make the best of it. You don't have to like where you're going. You don't have to, really. But there are times when you do get an opportunity to go do something neat. Go do something special. Go do something you've never done before. And if you have a little extra time, don't sit in the truck. Get out, enjoy yourself, especially if you go out east. It doesn't matter where you go out east. There's a cab, there's a way around everywhere. And at the time, it was relatively cheap. And with Uber and Lyft now and ride-sharing apps, it's still not all that expensive compared to an actual cab. Don't ever get a cab in Vegas. Trust me on that. But make the most of where you're at. Enjoy yourself, guys. We only get one go around here, and when you get an opportunity to do something special, take it, man. Oh, they're finally unloading me. What is it? An hour late. But go ahead and enjoy yourself. So I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Make the most of while you're out here because, well, somebody's got to. So we'll see you next video.